let's start with Bucs Pats, then we'll get to the Cowboys, and then hopefully we'll have time to do a few other NFC things as well. I feel like neither team should leave that game feeling great. Like if you're the Bucs, you're happy you escaped with a win, but your biggest concern going into the game was clearly your secondary. It's why you signed Richard Sherman. You suffer another injury in the secondary. You let Mac Jones move the ball even though you hold him to 17 points. But if I'm the Bucs, I am concerned about my pass defense, especially in that conference against those quarterbacks. And if I'm the Patriots, I feel like, okay, for the second time this year, our defense has done enough for us to win a game, and we went home losing a home game. It's their third home loss, by the way. What do you give me your thoughts on both of those, the Bucs side of things and the Pats side of things?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you're happy to get away with a win, no matter how it turns out. And those conditions were rough. They were rough from a weather standpoint. They were rough from an emotional standpoint. I don't think that Tampa Bay played a particularly efficient game overall. But at the end of it, to be able to get on the plane with a win, you're excited no matter how ugly it may look. On the flip side, obviously New England's unhappy with a loss, another home loss, but they've got to be really happy with what Mac Jones did. And when you run the ball for -1 yards, which they've never had, I believe they've never done ever from a Patriots team, and I think the last time it was done was in 2007 with the Lions. And then the whole stadium knows you have to throw. They're pressuring you as much as they were pressuring Mac Jones, and he's able to be as efficient as he was. That's a really good sign. And I know that we want to look at rookie quarterbacks and expect them to be further along than they are, but that's a huge jump that Mac Jones took last night, especially with the lack of running game, especially with the emotion behind the game, with the weather, with all those things. For him to be as efficient as he was impressive.
Okay, so we disagree on Mac Jones. So let's stay here for a moment, because I know you get into, even if you're not as into them as I am, but you're very aware of and keen to the advanced numbers and the kind of, new age way of looking at football. And one thing that is way more valued, at least talked about today than it was in years past, is explosives. Is about finding ways to make those explosive offensive plays. And to me, there's two pretty clear ways to make them. One is have an explosive playmaker. You just get the ball in his hands and watch him do work, right? Throw a little swing pass or a screen pass, something, and let that guy's talents take over, kind of what the Giants have hoped Saquon would do, right? The other way is deep passes down the field. The Patriots right now don't seem to be able to do either. I don't think they have the personnel to have the explosive playmaker. Oh, just get the ball in Jonnu Smith's hands and watch him make people miss. Nope. And they're not. Mac doesn't throw the ball deep down the field. So in that regard, can efficiency be a little overrated? Because everyone made a big deal out of the 19 straight completions last night, but you're still kicking field goals and only scoring 17 points because they're not explosive plays. Like, does that concern you at all? Do you hear what I'm saying in that regard?
Yeah, it does. And when we talked about the game prior to the game, I said that what a lot of teams are doing now is they're pressuring him because he gets hit a lot, even though he doesn't get sacked at a tremendously high rate. And they're playing tight man-to-man coverage because he's not making people pay for tight man-to-man coverage. But when you look at last night, efficient is what you needed. That weather was tough to deal with. And then you've got the fact that they were pressuring the way that they were pressuring, and they had zero running game. They had as bad a running situation as you could possibly have. So taking all those things into account, to have not only an efficient performance, but an efficiency at that high of a level for a young guy in that environment, it's really hard to do. And I know what you're saying. They're not putting up big points right now, and they're not hitting teams down the field. But there's a lot of rookie quarterbacks that go into that situation and would have folded. That with no running game would have been dead. Would have been dead. And he rose up in that moment.
And that is where, by the way, I should give credit, is that he is yet to look like the moment's too big for him. Like, I think Alabama prepares you well for that. I think Saban does. The fact that every game you're in, you're expected to win. Clearly, I think between the ears, he's ready for it. You would have maybe, if you're a Patriots fan, liked to see if Belichick would have let him try that 4th and 3 rather than Nick Folk from 56 yards. But we don't have to get further into that. I want to get to the Cowboys with you. I want to talk about their defense. So before I do that, let me say this on the front end. Coach, who is a very regular guest on First Things First, keeps coming on and saying, hey, you know what I think maybe the Cowboys should do is find a way to run the ball. And I keep saying, no, they shouldn't. Just throw the ball. Zeke can't do it anymore. Yesterday, they ran the ball beautifully. The offense looked great. Dak only had to throw the ball like 22 times. So I will fold my hand temporarily to you in that regard. You were correct that when the Cowboys' running game is effective, that it is when they are at their best. So that we don't even have to spend time on it. I'm just saying you're right because I want to talk to you about their defense. On the defensive side of things, I think that we might have to start looking at them as a real contender. Because let's just assume, and I know they're young players, but let's assume that Diggs is awesome. Because he's been awesome so far. Let's just assume he can keep it up. And let's assume Parsons is going to be the defensive rookie of the year, which he looks like so far. I know those are two big assumptions. But as a defensive coach, if you have a great corner and an elite pass rusher, do you basically automatically have a really good defense? Because it looks to me that's what the Cowboys might somehow have thanks to how well they drafted.
Well, having those two pieces in place go a long way. If you can have one player that can potentially ruin the game for your opponent, any game that they have to account for, that makes the other pass rushers more effective. And if you've got a corner that could potentially either take away their best receiver or a side of the field and you're able to push coverage, that also gives you tremendous options. What's exciting when you have a young defense is that they typically get better about midway through the season. There's a secondary jump that takes place because they have experience. They're used to playing with each other. They've built up the reps. And you saw that to some degree with Carolina. And really, you're seeing that carry over to this season. Now, I think what Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, has done a nice job with, or a really good job with, is simplifying things so that these guys, as they're learning, can play fast. And then you can add a little bit more each week to get to the multiples that you want to get to. And he's got them playing fast. He's got them playing hard. It looks like there's a toughness to them. There's a little bit of resilience. And going back to the running game, which you're absolutely right, the Cowboys, when they run the ball, are much more effective overall. Where that also helps is from time of possession. And when your defense struggles or is emerging, to be able to protect them and not put them in those situations where they've got extra downs to play, that helps significantly too. And Dallas is doing a pretty good job with that.
Is the best Cowboys team since Dak's rookie year. To me, it's pretty clear in that regard. And Zeke, even though he was excellent yesterday, I don't think is close to the same guy he was his rookie season. But Dak is better than Dak was his rookie season. And if the defense, keep in mind, they don't even have DeMarcus Lawrence right now. When he gets back, if this defense can be right around 10th best in football with that offense and that division and that schedule, this legitimately could be a 17-game season, a 13-4 Cowboys team, which should be good enough to compete for the 1 seed. Let's stay with a team that I thought would be competing for the 1 seed, but now has 2 losses and is on their backup quarterback, and that's San Francisco. They're on their backup quarterback, but that might also be their preferred quarterback. What do you think in San Francisco is the level that Lance has to play at for him to keep the job now that Jimmy's probably going to miss a couple weeks with a calf injury?
Well, from a head coaching standpoint, this is about as good a situation as you could be in a bad situation. So your starter goes down, and he's only going to miss a couple weeks, but you've got this player that you want to get on the field, and you want to see how good he is. Now he plays the second half last week. You've got a whole week of preparation with him this week. You can get a real sense of how well he does with a week's worth of preparation and when he's the starter without having to bench your starter. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine too. You can go back to the starter. There's no loss of legitimacy in the locker room. There's no knock on his confidence because you had to pull him again to put Jimmy Garoppolo back in. There's no knock on Garoppolo because he's out due to injury. So you get a real live look at your future now in a big game to see where he is. And then I believe they've got the bye week after that. So you get to go into the bye week with this additional information. So if you want to make the switch long term, now you've got that extra week to prepare him that much better. It's timing wise, you never want your starter to be injured, but this is a great spot for them to be in.
Could you, Coach, if you're a team that needs a quarterback this year, if you're Miami and you're like, man, we should be able to compete. I don't think they'll do it, but Pittsburgh, they obviously are going to let Ben play out the string, but they obviously need a quarterback. Do you think someone could trade for Jimmy G during the season and get him involved? Like, would that be effective, or is it too much starting quarterbacks, changing teams, systems, everything that has to be done in the offseason?
Yeah, well, first of all, I know you're not a fan of Ben Roethlisberger, but can I just make a point that if they really think that Ben's not the answer in Pittsburgh, maybe you shouldn't have him throw 40 times every game. Maybe you should run the ball a little bit more there. I'm just saying, I know people want to kill Ben, but they could help him out a little bit. In terms of going to get a guy during the season, you can do it if you think it's going to be a significant upgrade, but there still is that transition time. And are you going to bring him in and make everybody learn the system that he's most comfortable with, because that's what makes him the most effective? Or do you have him learn your system, which now there's going to be growing pains even with veteran quarterbacks because there's such volume to an offensive system? Could it be done? Yeah, it would have to be a real significant upgrade to offset the challenges of the transition time that would go in to make him effective.
Coach, hope to see you in New York City Sunday night for Bills Chiefs game of the year. Bucks, Pats, everyone else's game of the year. The actual game of the year is next week. Here we'll have a warm plate of nachos ready for you in my living room to watch the game. Thank you so much, Coach. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.